Okay.
So thank you all for coming today. We're excited to learn from Josh on the product development process. He is an expert in this area. So glad that you guys showed up despite the snow and everything crazy going on. My name's Sarah. I'm the program manager of the Utah Microloan Fund. If you haven't heard of us, we are a statewide nonprofit that has been around since 1991. So a whole year after I was born. So a really long time. And our whole goal is to help entrepreneurs. So we do microloans from 5,000 to 50,000, specifically for startups and also people who may not look as desirable on paper to a bank. So if you're ever looking for funding for your product or your, whatever it might be, definitely check us out. And also, we have classes like this all the time that are free, virtual, and open to the public. So definitely follow us on social media to stay in the know of everything happening. And with that, I'll turn it over to Josh.
Cool. Well, welcome. So I'm going to make everybody uncomfortable right out of the gate just to engage our senses a little bit more and ask you if you're in a place to turn your cameras on, go ahead and switch those on. So if you're on the toilet, leave them off for all of our sake. But if you're not on the toilet and you're not driving, do me a favor, switch those cameras on so we can get some interaction, see your smiling faces, and get to know each other a little bit more. Appreciate it. All right. Do me a favor. There are a few types of products we can develop. So the most obvious one for me is a physical product, but you can also develop services and you can develop software. So if you would drop in a chat for me, which type of product you guys are most concerned with, physical product, service design, or software/app type of product. And that will be super useful to me because I can kind of shift the presentation a little bit depending on who's here and what the big concerns are for people. So it looks like mostly physical products. Melissa has service design in mind. IT for, I'm probably going to butcher your name, Ruchika. I apologize if I got that wrong.
That's
few
correct.
Softwares. Okay.
Yeah.
Service, product looking for manufacturer. You can do metal casting. Very cool. Okay. So we're about 70% product and then split on the other 30% between software and service. That is super helpful. I'll let you guys know that I'll probably mostly use examples from physical products because that's what we do, but the principles apply for service and software design. And I can give you some little variations and tools that apply a little bit more towards either service or software if we want. The other thing, guys, before I get into this is I love interaction. So I've got this whole presentation ready because I want to be able to teach and stay on pace. But if at any time you guys have a question or need clarification, unmute, shout at me, ask a question, drop it in the chat. Sarah, I think you'll do a really good job monitoring the chat.
Yep.
If you want to drop it in there so she can interrupt me and ask those questions if we want. I probably won't look at the chat much, Sarah, so I'm going to turn that over to you if you can keep an eye on that. Cool beans. All right, guys, let's have some fun. Let me share my screen here. And let's see. There we go. We should be live. Okay, so today we're going to cover the product development process. Our goal is to get you from here, from this phase to this phase, product in hand. So we're going to learn how to go from idea to production. Whoop, let me fix my screen here. What we want to do is just learn the key steps in product development so that you know how to bring your ideas to market successfully. We want to help you learn how to project the financial viability of a product and make data-driven decisions. And we want to help you discover the key steps to launch and market your product to your target audience. So why me? Just a little bit about me. In my 8 years as CEO of Product Evo, I've been privileged to help entrepreneurs develop hundreds of new products. In this time, I've seen a lot of products go on to be huge successes, but I've also seen mediocre to underwhelming product launches, and I've seen total failures. So what I want to do is I want to share what I've learned with you guys so that you can learn from mistakes and learn from successes and hopefully be successful yourselves. One of the most common beliefs that I have an issue with is to follow your passion. I believe that passion without good strategy is wasted energy. So I'm on a mission to make the art of developing successful new products predictable and repeatable. And my unique approach is to align the product development process with first principles for demand generation to help you become more successful. A little bit about me outside of Product Devo. I'm a landlocked surfer. So I typically move abroad with my family in the summers to chase waves during big wave season in Central America. And this year, my wife got sick of the bugs in Central America. So we're going to Spain and chasing waves in northern Spain and southern France for the summer. So I'm always looking for ways to expand my thinking about what's possible in life and then take action to live that way, both personally and professionally. So that's a little bit about me and what I bring to the table for this. All right. In product development, there's about a dozen things that will kill you at any given time. I just want to focus on 3 today that are the big killers. Number one is costs. New product development is incredibly expensive, and simple mistakes during new product development can escalate costs and kill good projects. Research by the University of Cambridge Judge Business School found that the average cost to bring a new product to market can range from $250,000 to $5 million, depending on the product and industry. And that's no joke. That's what we see too. So everybody seems to think they can do it cheaper somehow. But when you really look into the cost of your own sweat equity and labor, meaning you're not working, making money somewhere, you're putting your time and energy into this, cost of design, engineering, the cost of prototyping, creating tooling, and ultimately buying inventory, doing that production run, and then acquiring customers. That's pretty accurate, just kind of from our subjective point of view, what we see. So it's expensive. And where we see costs kill people is in not understanding what goes into designing, developing, and launching new products. So they don't know what it's going to take, and they typically run out of capital before they're able to see projects all the way through. So the next major challenge that we see is delays. So when you don't know what you're doing, it's pretty easy to skip steps and skip stages, get things wrong, and then end up having to go backwards and fix those things again, which adds delays. On the other side of that, I see a lot of analysis paralysis. We talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, people that have a brilliant idea, but just fail to take action because they don't know what to do next, or they get intimidated or scared or talk themselves out of it because they can't articulate the risks and put a plan in place to mitigate them. And the other part of delays is just project management skill. It's an actual skill set that people underestimate. So even if you're a solopreneur and you don't have a team, you still have a team. You still have to work with a banker to get capital or investors to get capital. You've got to work with a marketing company to help launch the project. You've got to find a factory. You've got to work with an engineer, a designer. These are all people that may not be official employees of yours, but they're a team, and you've got to manage them. You've got to keep them aligned and on task and all working towards the same vision. So project management skills is something we see that causes delays and kills a lot of good projects. The final one is market. So Ratcliffe's law of startup success says the number one company killer is lack of market. About 80% of new products fail. And Harvard Business Review reports it a little higher. They say it's closer to 95% of new products fail. So how can you know if you've got a good idea worth investing thousands of dollars in your years of your life into? How do you know who your customer is and if you can affordably reach them and tell them about your product? How can you find out if that customer actually cares enough to take action and buy your product? So we don't want to get all the way to the end of product development only to find out that you got a garage full of stuff you can't sell. We want to find that out early on in the process. So with that, what we're trying to achieve today is when you understand product development, we want you to be able to drive growth for your business with profitable new products. understanding the process is going to increase your chances of success of bringing a profitable product to market, not just a quality product, but a profitable product. The other thing it's going to help you do is make data-driven decisions, because we believe when you make good decisions early on about product design, production, market entry, based on data and customer feedback, it makes every single other part of developing and launching a new product easier. When you understand the new product development process, you're going to save time and money, because you're going to avoid common mistakes that can lead to delays, increase costs, and ultimately end up in a product failure. And we want to help you get ahead of the competition. When you understand the product development process, you'll be able to identify market opportunities quicker and develop innovative products that meet customer needs better than what others can do. So those are the outcomes we're trying to get today. And I think a lot of people's screens are back off, but if your screen is on, give me a thumbs up if you're with me to this point. Awesome. We're going to dig in to the meat and potatoes of this. Oh man, I forgot to click my screen. There we go. Okay, here is the product development process. I like to look at these as 7 critical problems to solve rather than 7 linear steps to take. It's laid out pretty, step 1 through 7. It doesn't work like this in real life. The reality of it is you're going to go from, coming up with a good idea to trying to design that, to figuring out there's something wrong with the design. And you're going to go back to market research, figure something out from a customer, and then you're going to try to prototype that before you design it. And you're going to be in and out and around these steps. A lot of these you're going to work on simultaneously rather than sequentially, but it's still good to know like the general flow of how the product development process works. So step 1 is market research. Step 2 is ideation and strategy. Then we have product design, your profitability outlook, then product development or prototyping, production, and finally market entry. Each of these steps really could be its own workshop. In fact, we teach a six-week course just on product strategy alone. So the game plan for today is just to give you an overview of the whole process, let you know what we're trying to achieve in each step. And then I'm just going to share a few tips and tools that we're aware of to help you get started in each of these steps and hopefully give you a push in the right direction. So let's get started with number 2. I told you this is not a linear process, so we're going to start nonlinear right out of the gate with step number 2. And why there? It's because most people are going to start with step number 2 anyway. It's coming up with an idea. It's the epiphany that hits you at 2 a.m. right as you're getting into bed, and you fall in love. Most people fall in love with this idea and they're like, this is the one. This is the one that I'm going to take to market. So what are we trying to accomplish here at the step number 2, ideation and strategy? We're trying to come up with a home run idea that we can use to profitably build a company, whether that's an existing company or a new company. We want to be able to profitably build a company. We want to find your unique advantage. We got to figure out which advantages you have that can be leveraged for success. Everybody needs something to give them that little bit of an edge to compete, especially if you're new or starting. The third thing we want to do is refine our product strategy so that we clearly can show how we will solve an important customer problem well and profitably to build a sustainable competitive advantage. So it's enduring. That's what we're trying to accomplish. So here's some tips. The cost of making up the constraints after you think you have a good idea are enormous.
Oh, brilliant.
Right?
It is.
So what does this mean to me? What does it mean to Seth Godin? The cost of obtaining success for an idea that you've already fallen in love with may not be worth it when you look back at all the time, energy, effort, money, and emotional costs you put into something. So what Seth Godin argues is decide on your constraints before you come up with your product idea, because it's too easy to fall in love with your darling and not be willing to kill it. And so when it comes to constraints, I want you guys to ask, What resources are you willing to put into this? What resources are you willing to expend in terms of emotional labor and risk to get? What resources do you already have, like time, risk tolerance, or money that you can put into this? Here's a big one that almost nobody thinks about. Your customers. Who do you want your customers to be? Who do you want to serve? Because if you hate your customers, you're going to hate your business. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs that complain all day about their customers. Their life's miserable. Put constraints in place. Decide ahead of time who you want to serve and why you want to serve them. Outcomes. This is a biggie. What do you want to get out of this? Are you trying to create a lifestyle for yourself? Are you trying to create a healthy income that allows you to travel, to be flexible? Or are you trying to build a company in as short a time as possible for a massive exit, like the unicorns of Silicon Valley? All are okay answers. Everything's acceptable, but what do you want? Figure that out ahead of time, and then make those decision-making criteria and filters for your idea. All right, tip number 2, tune in and follow your curiosity before you commit to your product. So spend plenty of time reading books, blogs, websites, just follow the thread, let yourself go down the rabbit holes. Keep going further and further back to the original source, and that's where things tend to get super interesting. And one of my favorite things, I keep an idea journal. I've got an idea journal going clear back to my days at Utah State, and I've jotted down every business idea I've ever had in them. What I found is that's been one of my most effective filters, because I'll have this stroke of brilliance and I'm like, this is like $1 million idea, guys. And I'll write it down and I never think about it again. That was a dud. But every once in a while, I write down these ideas and they keep nagging at me and chewing at me, and I can't leave them alone. And that little aspect of writing it down and ignoring it for a couple of weeks is one of the best filters, because your subconscious knows what you're really lit up about and what you're excited about, and you stay excited about those ideas. The other question I want to throw out there, I joke with my wife a lot because I'm an entrepreneur, so ideas come nonstop to me. But I've learned to add this little caveat, and that is, that's a great idea for someone else. Meaning I know what my criteria and my filters are. And even if I think it's a brilliant, profitable idea, if it doesn't meet my criteria, I'm now okay saying that's a great idea for somebody else. I don't have to do it. I hope somebody else does it, not for me. Doesn't meet my criteria. So it's a great idea for somebody else. Great filter. Okay. So to get started in this, I like to begin with the end in mind with my idea. So you've got an idea, write your customer value statement. Tell it in narrative fashion. Start with the end in mind and do your positioning first. What you're going to find out really quick is, as you write this statement about what your product is, who it helps, what it helps them achieve, and how it does it, what positive benefits it provides, and the negative outcomes it prevents. As you write that, it's going to get really clear really quick what assumptions you're making in that statement, because you're going to be like, oh yeah, I just BS'd all this. Great. Now you know what you BS'd, and now you know what you have to go solve for and back up with some market research. But I love starting with this first, because the energy you get from coming up with a new idea, it's fun to just drop it into a statement like this pretty quickly and then work backwards to figure out what you need to solve. Here's some tools that are going to help you articulate your idea and think about your idea on a deeper level. There's 3 I'm going to share. We could go down rabbit holes on all 3 of these, but I'll just make you aware of them. Google's a great resource. You can dig in a little bit more. So the first is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Any and every product has to have some functional aspects to it. It's got to meet people's functional needs. But where a lot of people stop is they stop at the functional level and they forget about all of the layers of Maslow's hierarchy that go above and beyond that. We've broken it down into 3, but really, if you can even just think about it as functional and emotional, you're ahead of 99.9% of entrepreneurs out there. So in terms of emotional needs, they can be life-changing or social impact that you can make via the product. On this side, we've got 3 levels of product. I put these side by side because they correlate pretty well. This yellow circle is the actual product. That's kind of like the functional product over here. These map pretty well together. So if we're talking about a car, the functional product would be, a metal box with the motor and 4 wheels. That's it. That's the actual product. It gets you from point A to point B. The core benefit of that product, now that's where things get interesting, right? So if you're talking about a Ferrari, that core benefit could be, well, I look cool. Or it could be that I get joy or thrill from going fast, or I get status. So you got to know who your customer is so you can identify what their core need is. But those are some examples of some core needs. That's where we're getting to that emotional benefit that starts to differentiate what that actual product is. If you're looking at a minivan, that core product could be safety. I feel safe because I'm in the highest safety rated family minivan. So that's a really big emotional need that can't even be life-changing for people if it's built well. Very different emotional needs. So that shapes the actual product. Still both metal boxes on 4 wheels with a motor, but very different form factors. The augmented product is everything that goes around that product from the purchasing process to the post process. So in a real simple way, sticking with the car analogy, it's like the extended warranty, or it's like the buying process at the dealership. So these are things that are often overlooked, but provide great opportunities for innovation. And I just wanted to show this quickly so that as you have ideas, you can start to think about your ideas on a little bit deeper level than a lot of entrepreneurs do to just give you that innovative edge over your competitors. The last tool I'll share in terms of your ideation, your product idea, and your strategy, this is the Blue Ocean Strategy Canvas. So if you want to learn more about it, Blue Ocean Strategy, it's a whole book. They've got courses online, tons of great videos where you can dig a little deeper. But the gist of it is they've broken this canvas down into 4 key areas. What can you eliminate, reduce, raise, or create? These points down here are unique to each product. And most of you probably have no idea what they should be for your product, and that's because you haven't done market research yet. And so doing your market research and understanding your customers, how you identify the key points that matter to them, not to you, to them. What do they care about? How are they thinking about products and making their comparison decisions? And we get to define these any way we want. And as we define them, we can map out what our competitors are doing versus what we want to do. And right on paper, we can visually see the way we're going to differentiate our products from the competition. So that's Blue Ocean Strategy in 30 seconds or less. It's a whole rabbit hole to go down, very worth going down to help you dig deeper on how to innovate your product. All right. I'm going to pause here for a moment. Sarah, stop sharing my screen. Are there any questions? We're cooking along pretty quick. Are there any questions or thoughts that we need to pause on?
Not any questions, just some comments. Laura said it's interesting that strategy comes before design and production. And then Melissa was saying that's a lovely way to reframe. I can't remember what you were referencing.
Yeah, he mentioned, oh my gosh, see, I can't even remember exactly what it was now. It's like right there in my mind. It's fine. It was near the end. You had said, looking at it as, I think it was like it was like observing ideas. It was about your idea journal, which I thought was really awesome. I'm going to I'm going to get myself a lovely little new journal and start, because I'm the same way. I'm entrepreneurial, mind driven. And it's just like ideas always come to me. But when you write something down, it locks it a little bit differently into your brain. And so I think we can all take a note from that right there, just the idea journal itself. And then you can almost like kind of hear it if it really sounds good or not by doing that. But yeah, you said that you let the ideas be for somebody else. And I thought that was great. A great way to reframe it.
Great way to reframe it. Great way to filter ideas.
Well, yeah, because I think a lot of us get stuck in, at least I do. I get stuck in, I call it the brain tornado, like when all of the ideas are like all over the place. And I'm like, I want to do all of them, but I literally, as a human being, cannot. So it's important to, first of all, set those boundaries for yourself, but also it's like almost giving yourself grace to say, yeah, I hope somebody else does it. But like, I am one person. So
100%.
you do, yeah, you just have to kind of set those boundaries, and that's a great way to look at it positively. So I appreciated it.
Oh, good. Love it. Laura, you said that it's interesting that strategy comes before design and production. The reason for that is strategy is much cheaper to iterate on than design and production. So once you start paying a mechanical designer or engineer or industrial designer to sketch up your product and actually build it in CAD, when you start changing that, it gets super expensive. But to change your strategy is a few pencil strokes on paper. So we'd like to do the least expensive aspects, highest leverage aspects of product development, in my opinion, in the beginning. And then once we refine those, we can move to the more and more expensive aspects of product development, because the cost of iteration gets higher as you get further down the line. Does that make sense?
Yep, she commented it makes sense.
Awesome. All right, guys, we're going to keep rolling. We got a lot of ground to cover. I want to give you what you need. And oops. Let's share my screen again. All right, here we go. Cool. Okay, we're on market research. So now that we've done step 2, we're going to move back to step number 1, because, hey, we're entrepreneurs and we're just going to do this however we want. Non-linear, it's the way we rock and roll. All right. So in market research, what we're trying to do is develop empathy for your customers and surface insights for creating products and services that they really do care about and they want and they need. So what do I mean by empathy? It means actively listen to your target audience to understand their perspectives, their experiences, their needs, not yours. Get out of your own head and get into theirs. See life through their lens. What we're looking for at this phase right here in market research is we're looking for verified customer needs. You want to validate at this stage whether you've got a good idea worth investing in or not. And then we want to look at that niche, that ideal customer profile that's both reachable and viable, meaning can we reach them? Number 1, viable means are they large enough and can we afford to acquire a customer? Are they easy enough to reach that we can afford to reach them? So one of my favorite quotes is, if you only have one idea, you don't have a real choice. Or if you don't have multiple opportunities, you don't have a real choice. Alex Hormozy, he's the founder of acquisitions.com. And what happens is when you have just one idea that you fall in love with, it leads to the halo effect for the product you're considering. And what you do during market research is you tend to just look for ways to justify why it was a good idea in the first place. And it makes you blind to a lot of issues because of confirmation bias. So I'm going to use a simple, humble water bottle as an example. If we come up with this brilliant idea that we're going to make a water bottle, well, what problem is that water bottle solving from our customer's perspective? What problem is it solving? Let's say it was just to move water from point A to point B. Great. How else could we solve that problem? Well, we could use a bucket. A bucket moves water from point A to point B very effectively. Or we could use a cup. Maybe we just needed to move a small amount of water from point A to point B. Also a way to do that. If we're needing to move water from point A to point B in the background or in the backyard, then we could use a hose. So now we have options, right? Now we can actually look at, well, what's the best way to solve my particular customer's problem? And what's the nuances of this particular customer's problem and the best way to approach it? So just one way to think about market research, what are we trying to do? Figure out what that core problem is, what they're trying to solve, and then force yourself to brainstorm additional ideas and ways to solve it. You're going to find creative breakthroughs that way. Another way I like to find creative breakthroughs is by running a friction audit. What a friction audit is you put your customer hat on and you move from step to step to step, from having the problem to researching the problem to finding a solution, making the purchase, and then using the product. And take note of the friction points at every step along the way, because every single one of those friction points is an opportunity for innovation. We don't always have to innovate the physical product that we're holding in our hand. Sometimes it's an opportunity to innovate around that buying process or research process that gives you the breakthrough. In service design, for you guys that are on here for service design, this is massive. Like, this is a phenomenal way to reinvent a service for somebody to go through and experience that service firsthand from a lot of people, from a lot of competitors, map out where those friction points are, and then innovate the service based on that. In market research, we don't want to create demand. We want to find existing demand. We don't want to predict the future. We just want to focus on provable, actual demand. You can find great opportunities that exist right now if you just know where to look. And what we're looking for is evidence that our hunches about our product are right and that our competition is not aware of. So we're looking to exploit existing demand because it's so much cheaper and easier to do that than create new demand on your own. And market research is just the process of figuring out where the real passion and needs already exist. So a few things we're looking for. We're looking for market need. We're looking for the customer's ability to pay. We're looking for the right market size. It's big enough to meet our needs, not so big that we get lost in a sea of huge competitors. And we're looking at the cost to reach that market. A couple of the tools that you can use to do this is qualitative research, quantitative research, triangulating your market size, and then using Maslow's hierarchy again to niche down to the right niche for you to reach. So I'm going to cover these very, very quickly in a nutshell. For qualitative research, we don't want to predict the future, but we are going to go uphill to where ideas get started. And so I love this graphic because down here at the bottom of the hill is the pool of common knowledge. This is where commodities exist. This is like the red ocean, sea of competition, sea of sameness. By the times things hit the mainstream news, and they're mostly common knowledge, and it's too little too late. If we go upstream just a little bit, we can find great ideas starting to hatch and coalesce in social media, blogs, and newsletters. By the time they hit this level, they've hit some level of momentum. Haven't hit mainstream news yet, but there's enough people talking about them. People are taking the time to seriously write and publish about them. And if we go upstream just a little further, we find niche communities. These are communities like Reddit, niche Facebook communities, niche Slack communities around a specific idea. And if we go up a little further, these are your one-on-one interviews, the individual people in that market. And the way I like to think about these is you've got to kind of determine the signal from the noise. The higher upstream you go, the more noisy it gets. On the individual persona level, everybody might have their own opinion. It's very noisy. Which one of those opinions matters? I don't know. Clear down here where the signal is very obvious. It's too little, too late. The competition's too high. My sweet spot for market research, I really like digging into niche communities. They're a fascinating source of information. I'll go back up to the individual persona level to kind of validate my findings on one-on-one interviews and go a little deeper. Occasionally, I can see ideas in social media blogs that'll spark ideas for additional research. But for me personally, that's my sweet spot, niche communities, to get started here. All right. As you build this information, I like to organize it in an ideal customer profile. You guys can find amazing templates for this online. A lot of them exist. This is a very highly simplified one, but it captures a few key ideas. One is, what is the niche job to be done? Like that overarching thing. This one is to organize the refrigerator. When we were talking about the water bottle example, it was to move water from point A to point B. That's the problem. That's what we're trying to do. Up from that, we've got individual personas that have slightly different needs. So the frugal mom wants to prevent wasted food. That's why she's organizing the refrigerator. OCD mom, no offense if there's any on here, I'm one a little bit, OCD dad. They want a clean, structured appearance. And the bodybuilder, he wants to store his expensive supplements. So they all want to organize the fridge just for slightly different reasons. And then we've built into the structure an area to capture the emotional need. Well, why do they want to do that? What's their motivating factor? She wants to feel smart and successful. She wants to feel calm and in control of her life. And he wants to feel protected and safe. It's all the time I'll spend on that. But just think about this framework as a way to capture the insights you get from market research and start to build out messaging and key features to build into your product, your idea that you came up with. All right. On estimating your addressable market size, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they look at the total addressable market as their market size. It is not. It never will be. It's not even for the biggest players in the world. If we're thinking about footwear, this would be like the entire shoe market. It's massive. It's everybody that wears shoes, right? We want to drill down just a little bit to your serviceable addressable market. In terms of footwear, this would be like people that want to wear running shoes, or you can go even a little bit more niche and it could be people that want to wear zero drop running shoes or ultra cush running shoes, right? You get to define this, but you can't get this whole market either because of these pesky things called competitors that want a piece of this action too. So nobody owns 100% of that market share. So what we really want to figure out is we want to estimate the serviceable, obtainable market. This is the piece of the market that any one competitor could realistically obtain. There's ways to do this. The quickest hack to do this is start with some Google research to figure out the total addressable market size. You can often find Google research for free pretty quick on the serviceable addressable market if it's not too niche. But then use some tools on Amazon or Reddit to get a sense of, you can also use Google Trends to get a sense of how much traffic there is or how much interest there is for your very specific offering per competitor, meaning you can look at competitor A, B, C, and D and kind of get an average of what the competitors are doing within this market using some of those tools for Amazon, like Helium 10, Jungle Scout, or some for Amazon. There's really cool tools for Reddit if you're doing service design where there's no physical product, or Google Trends that also help you kind of relatively compare. Well, if running shoes are doing this and Nike running shoes are doing this and Reebok running shoes are doing this, I can kind of start to get an idea of what any individual competitor is doing in there. And that's the very quick and dirty way to estimate your obtainable market size. All right, we're cooking along. Step 3, design. I'm going to stop again, Sarah, for just a moment and see if everybody's following along with me.
There is nothing in the chat.
Cool. Guys, you're an easy crowd. I'm either doing an amazing job presenting or completely losing you all. Probably nowhere in the middle. Getting a few thumbs up. All right, we'll keep it cooking.
Can I ask one question?
Please do.
Yeah, I know you said we don't want to create demand, but find existing demand.
Yes.
Unless it's a revolutionary product that nobody has thought of, right? I mean, those are 1 in a billion, but that may be one place where you would think of something nobody's thought of and come up with something revolutionary, right?
Yeah, and I would say I'd even be cautious with that for a couple of reasons. One, you said it yourself, they're 1 in a billion. Bad odds. I wouldn't go to Vegas with those odds personally. 2, if you're going to do something revolutionary and create demand, it takes very, very deep pockets. So you need like sometimes hundreds of millions in investment capital to make those revolutionary ideas catch on. But 3, like, let's break down some of the revolutionary ideas. Let's look at AI. Like, one of the most revolutionary ideas that's hit in our lifetimes, that demand exists. It's solving for existing demand. They're just solving for that demand in a new and innovative way that's revolutionary. So even that, I would argue that the demand already existed for it.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool.
Hey,
Love it
Josh.
though. Yeah, Jacob.
I wanted to say one thing. In the product design I've done, I found that the easiest step to skip is this step, is the market research step, figuring out what customers want. And sometimes maybe most times when people do that, it's kind of and I've seen this happen a lot of times, and it never is good, but it's, hey, look at this thing I want to invent. Isn't this great? And people are like, yeah, that's awesome. And using that as validation for what you're doing is just scary as heck, because I've seen that happen way too many times, and it's not, people will just tell you what you want to hear if you're just doing that. You have to do a proper evaluation rather than just kind of ditch effort of, hey, isn't this great? My next door neighbor and my wife just doesn't
100%.
It actually gives you confidence where you shouldn't have confidence.
Yeah. Well said, Jacob. Thank you. Cool, guys. We're going to keep cooking. We got 4 more steps to cover. All right. Product design. So in product design, this is where it really starts to get fun for me, because this is where your concept, your idea starts to take shape for the first time. The very best place to start is with a sketch. And eventually, if it's a physical product, you're going to want to either work with an industrial designer or a mechanical designer, or both, depending what the product is. And what we're looking for at this step, number 3, is a design that is visually appealing, user-friendly, functional, and manufacturable at your target price point. For service and software design, we're looking for a service that is a compelling experience for customers, that creates word of mouth, that we're able to deliver profitably, and that is highly functional and repeatable for your team to deliver to your customers. For software, same kind of thing. We're looking for a software that has a profitable use case, easy UX for customers to use, so highly functional, and that you can develop with your team. All right, just focusing on physical products. Industrial design, for you guys that don't know, is where we focus on the appearance and usability of products. Industrial designers really consider how the product will be used and interacted with, and they're thinking of how to make the product functional, comfortable, and intuitive to use. A couple of the simple tools to use: start with pen and paper. A lot of times, industrial designers use Adobe Illustrator to kick out their more refined concepts that way. Mechanical design, on the other hand, focuses on the functionality or the mechanics of the product. This involves designing products that are structurally sound, durable, and efficient. Mechanical designers also consider factors such as materials, manufacturing processes, and safety requirements when designing products. This is a very quick and dirty overview of those 2 big disciplines. Long story short, if you're doing some type of soft good, think backpack, shoe, t-shirt, pants, industrial design is the end all be all. That's all you need to do typically. If you're doing any kind of hard good, something like a water bottle or the microphone that I'm talking in, some physical product, you're going to have to do some kind of mechanical design or mechanical engineering to create CAD files like the one you're looking at on the screen that manufacturers will use to build the product. In service design, process mapping is one of the most effective tools you can use. So what you're trying to do is create or improve services to make them more effective, more efficient, and user-friendly. So just start with customer journey mapping, service blueprinting, and user testing. On software design, start with user flows and start with wireframes. This is just how to get started in the design, get those first ideas on paper. Pro tips. Work with the pro. Work with the pro. If you're going into a football game, would you rather have Tom Brady in your corner or your buddy Carl? Right? Like, it's too many people I know are going to Fiverr for industrial design, or going to Upwork for to find Joe Schmo or their college buddy that, hey, I figured out how to use Fusion 360 once. I'm going to now design this product for you. That's your buddy Carl. Don't work with Carl. I like Carl. He's a fun guy to hang out with, but work with the pro to design your product. And here's why. When it comes to manufacturing a physical product, there's so many ways you can build in costs or engineer design out costs based on if your designer engineer understands how the manufacturing process works, how to build an injection molding tool smart, you can really save like massive amounts. Like if you're building a product that costs you $10 and you're only saving $1 or $2 a unit because of smart design, but you end up building 100,000 of those, you've paid for that design 30 times over. We've got an example, a customer we're working with called Astroblade right now. Their initial concept came to us with 23 parts. We prototyped it for them. It was a piece of junk. It fell apart. So not only were there 23 parts, it just didn't stay together well, and it didn't perform the way he wanted it to perform. So we kicked it to one of our designers that we work with regularly. They redesigned the product and reduced the part count from 23 parts to 17 parts, and ended up saving like 20 or 25% on the total cost, and the product worked better. The product works better. People are getting the benefit out of it. They're telling more people, they sell more. Like the costs go on both sides. Like you can reduce the cost of manufacturing, but you can improve the quality, which means you're selling more units when you work with the pro. So we don't even do design. So this isn't even self-promoting. We refer design out. So I'm telling you from a truly non-biased point of view, please work with a pro. It'll make your life hugely different. Next thing to consider is a lot of people will try to get their factories to do the design and engineering for them for free. Factories will do this for sure. If you're taking an existing product and you're making very, very minimal modifications to that, go for it. Honestly, like save yourself some money. If it's not anything that you want to be defensible IP, go for it. It's a great way to get a product to market fast and inexpensively. However, if you're doing anything that's unique or proprietary, steer clear of that, because if a factory does it for you, they now own the IP. They're not going to release those design and engineering files to you in most cases because they don't want to lose your business and you didn't pay them to do it. So they've now have you as a captive audience, which means you can't competitively quote your product. And if you ever have quality issues with that factory, it's going to be a nightmare to leave them. So for that reason, if you have any defensible or unique IP, we always recommend working directly with a designer engineering firm so that you control the IP. And then you can competitively quote that with factories. And if there's ever issues, you can pivot if needed. Another pro tip right here is to define your product goals before hiring a professional. If you've done your market research well, and if you've developed your product strategy well in the first 2 steps, defining your product goals is a very natural evolution of that. If you show up and work with a professional designer engineer and you say, hey, here's my strategy, here's who I'm designing for, and these are specific goals I'm trying to accomplish, they'll probably hug you because they'll be able to quote a very clear scope of work on that project and knock it out of the park for you, rather than having this big, vague, ambiguous exploration that they've got to go on with you, not knowing which way we're going to zig or zag during development. So just by defining your goals, you're going to save yourself potentially thousands on your design and engineering cost. And then the last thing I'd say during the design phase, keep design thinking, mindset. So design, build, test, and iterate. Nothing's perfect the first time. Even if you hire professional designers, some people expect that, hey, they're a pro, I've spent thousands of dollars on them, it should work perfectly. It doesn't. This is how design works. This is how product works. Design it, build it, test it, learn, iterate, and do that a few times until you really refine the concept and you're knocking it out of the park with people. Okay.
And I think just really quick to add to that, I think you're always iterating. That's kind of the mindset, is be ready to always iterate, because nothing ever stays the same. Everything changes often, and it would be a sad world if it didn't. So, I love that.
100%. Yeah. We tell our customers one of the best things you can do is launch your minimum viable product to the market, because now you're moving from 4 or 5 people testing your product and giving you feedback to thousands of people that paid to use your product that are very willing to share their opinions and feedback vocally. And I don't think the real learning starts to happen until it actually goes live, and then you continue to iterate. That's why we have iPhone, whatever 14 we're on now. It's because everybody iterates, we learn, we get better. So I love that. Very good. Yeah, Richard.
So one thing about that, believe your testing results, especially if they're negative, or even if they're negative, because if you deny the results of the testing, you will go down an endless rabbit trail that leads to a rabbit hole that will not bring you where you want to go.
100%. Yep. Some people think they can will different results into reality, and you can, but it usually means you're redesigning those new results into reality. So I love that. Okay. Cool. We're going to keep plugging along, guys. I want to keep this on track. I might have to go a little quicker so we can keep this on time. Step 4, this is a biggie that a lot of people miss, and it's the profitability outlook. So what we're trying to do at this step is figure out the viability and strategy for a new product from the business perspective. What we're looking for is, do we have a business case for the product or not? It might be an amazing widget. It might solve all kinds of problems, but if we can't build it at a price customers are willing to pay, we don't have a business case for it. And so we just want to figure out if it's worth the financial estimate or financial investment or not. There's 3 major things we're looking at. I'll go really quick on these. We're doing a financial analysis. That's your unit costs, tooling costs, design engineering, shipping, importing costs, all in. Figure out if we can build the unit at a cost that's profitable. More often than not, your first quotes are not going to be profitable. I would say 90 times out of 100, your first quotes are not profitable. This is part of that iteration thing. You take the design from your designer, you get it quoted, and you go, oh crap, we were trying to design a Toyota Camry. We accidentally designed a Ferrari that costs what a Ferrari costs. We need to strip some of these features out of this and get really clear on the critical few features that matter, re-engineer this, re-quote it, and then build a business case. So that's part of the design iterative processes. Not only does it function, but can you build it profitably? Identify your risks. So is there a new technology you're developing? Are there regulatory hurdles? Is there market acceptance hurdles? Is it going to cost you more to acquire a customer than something that's already readily accepted? What type of contingency budget do you need from that? What's the cost, all-in cost of development? How can you mitigate those risks? And then the last thing, your go-to-market strategy. What is it going to cost you to launch and market this product? This includes your pricing, your distribution, your promotion strategies. What's it going to cost you to acquire a new customer? So think about that. That all goes into your profitability analysis. I'll share a very, very quick story. This is, we had a keyboard customer, and we spent 2 years developing this project. And I don't even know how many tens of thousands the client spent on design and engineering and prototypes. He shifted his scope about every other month on what he was trying to do. It made it nearly impossible for our sourcing team to actually source and develop what he wanted because it changed constantly. In the end, we walked away from the project because what finally came to fruition 2 years later is he was trying to build a higher quality keyboard than Apple for 40% less than Apple. The problem was he was doing like, I don't even know, 1/10,000th of the volume that Apple does. So he had built his entire value proposition on higher quality for lower price, but he didn't have any of the resources or advantages to back that up. So it was a dud. Would a higher quality, lower priced keyboard sell? Absolutely. But he didn't have any means to get it done whatsoever. So it wasn't the right strategy for him. On the other side, we've got a customer, Kinetic Labs. They know their ideal client inside out and backwards. So they do super high-end custom keyboards that no one else is doing. Their keyboards are fully customizable. They're like triple or quadruple the price of an Apple keyboard, but they're crazy profitable because they found a need that Apple wasn't serving. And they built a business case and strategy around that they could actually deliver at low volumes, and they're killing it. So we love working with those guys. So 2 keyboards, different strategy. One was profitable, one ended up going down in flames. All right. Tip number 2 on your business case: source a good factory. Finding a good factory partner is so important because you're going to end up in a super intertwined relationship with your factory. And like any relationship, it's going to take a lot of communication, skills, work, and trust to make things work out well. So choose carefully, because if you choose a well-informed, quality factory up front, it's going to prevent 80% of the headaches you're going to have down the road. So choose a good factory. Some tools, if you're working domestically, mfg.com and makersrow.com are great places to source factory. Google's a great place to source factories domestically. mfg.com gives you access to factories in Mexico and some Latin American countries as well. Alibaba works really good for factories overseas in the Asian market and even some of the European markets. Importgenius.com, that's a little hack. If you know who your competitors are, you can look up who's manufacturing their product. It's a bit of a long shot to get their manufacturers to build for you too, but you can figure out who they are and chase that if you want. We do have a factory scorecard template. I'm going to drop this in the link for you in the chat. When you're talking to a whole bunch of factories at the same time, we use this scorecard internally to kind of sort and rank the factories and do very initial scoring on who we think is going to be the best supplier to work with. So there's a link for you. It's free. Just download it if you think it's going to be useful for you. All right. Tip number 3 on your business case or profitability analysis or outlook. My friend Ryan Dice says there's no such thing as a traffic problem. If you're not generating as much traffic as you would like, chances are you have a strategy problem. So his question is, how can you create an offer that enables you to profitably purchase all the traffic you want? How can you create an offer that allows you to profitably purchase all the traffic you want? So if you've created your product, you've designed it as well as it can possibly be designed to drive the true manufacturing costs down to as low as possible while still maintaining the key quality or your service or your software. And it's still not looking profitable. What other business models could make that work? What other offers could make it work? What augmented product could make it work? Or what core need could you solve for that makes people willing to pay more for that product than you think they would? So this is a completely different way to think about the profitability. We've looked at the cost side of profitability. Now we're looking at the revenue side of profitability with offer creation. Both work. I'm going to drop another tool for you guys. Let me see if I can copy this link. HubSpot, they wrote a blog post on pricing, and they've got just about as good a tool as I've seen anywhere. That breaks down like 16 different pricing strategies. And it's a spreadsheet like a Google sheet you can just make a copy of, and you can plug in a few key prompts and it'll kick out different pricing that might work for your product. So I just dropped that in the chat. It's a great resource for you guys if you want to use it. Also free. All right. Last tip on your profitability outlook is your company value statement. So kind of like your customer value statement, tell this in a narrative fashion, get really clear on how this product that you're coming out with allows you to leverage your unique advantages, supports the growth of your company, and then what specific skills and resources and distribution channel you're going to use to get it to market. So start here, use total BS if you want to get it started, but then work backwards, because in writing that, it's going to be clear what you need to figure out. And so you can go backwards and start to solve for that. All right, Sarah, how are we on time? We're going to 4:30.
Yep, 4:30.
Okay, cool. We'll cruise through these last couple, and then we'll leave, I think, probably a good 15 minutes for Q&A at the end and discussion.
Okay.
All right, so step number 5, product development, or we also call this prototyping. So the purpose of prototyping is to explore ideas, learn, and zero in on your final product. So we're not just prototyping your product, we're prototyping your entire business model, right? Because we're taking into effect the product you've designed and the profitability outlook, and you can prototype all of it. It's not uncommon to hit some serious setbacks here. In mythology, the dragon always guards the gold. If you haven't met that dragon yet on your journey, this is where you're definitely going to meet him if you want to come out and get the gold on the other side. What you're looking for at this phase is, can you create a product that consistently provides the promised result? Somebody else said it earlier, I can't remember who it was, but they said, it's okay if products fail here, or don't ignore the results of that failure. I 100% agree. This is where we want the product to fail. We want to find every problem possible at this phase so we can solve it and figure it out before we go to production and replicate that problem 10,000 times. I tell customers all the time, problems are your IP. What makes this difficult at this phase, the thing that you figure out, the way you figure out how to overcome those challenges becomes your IP. This is what makes your product defensible against competitors, because they haven't figured that out yet. And if it's anything truly unique, put IP around it, protect it so that they can't copy it. And I'd also argue that this is the dating phase of your product. You've done a lot right here. Market research, if you're doing it on your own, is relatively inexpensive. It can cost if you're using a firm. Ideation is pretty cheap. Product design, relatively, is going to be cheap in the grand scheme of things. This is where you date. You get to know your product a little bit more and make sure you're liking what you're doing before you full on commit to building it in a big way. All right. In terms of prototypes, these come in every shape, size, form, and function. This is one of my favorite movies. I don't know if you guys have seen The Founder. Give me a thumbs up if you've seen the movie The Founder about the McDonald's bros. If not, I think it's free on Netflix or Amazon or one of those. Go watch it. It's fantastic. But they show, is one of my favorite scenes from the movie, the McDonald's brothers sketching out dozens of different kitchen layouts on a tennis court with chalk. And then they do dry runs of their kitchen through it. They basically built what's now a multi-billion-dollar business on a tennis court with a piece of chalk. And that's how effective prototyping can be. You can think something great in your head, but once you actually see it in the real world, ideas come, innovation comes, breakthroughs happen really quickly that way. Okay. In prototypes, this is a question to write down. Ask, what am I trying to learn from this particular prototype? And then figure out the fastest and easiest way to build, test, and learn quickly. Learn that lesson and then move on to the next. So I lay out prototypes, and a lot of people don't even think of these as prototypes, but I lay them out like this. I like to start with elevator pitches. Just go out and talk to people. You can talk to 20 people an hour at a trade show or a farmer's market or business conference. Just go talk to them, pitch them. If you know what that problem is, pitch them, articulate that problem, see what people say. I found that I'll usually fall on my face the first dozen people I talk to, but after talking to a dozen people, I start to figure out how to articulate their problem in a really unique way that compels them to action. You know you're onto something if by the end of that trade show or conference, people are like, hey, when can I get this? Where can I get it? How much is it going to cost? When they're starting to ask how much it costs and when they can get it, you've started to figure out what messaging is going to work and connect with people. Surveys are another great way to go, is take what you learned in those elevator pitches, those one-on-one conversations, build them into a survey and just kind of validate on with bigger numbers that what you're finding is actually connecting with people. And then, build protos. These can be just super simple sketches. They can be chalk on tennis courts. They can be glue, string, cardboard, foam. Doesn't matter. Just prototype it. I like to think of this as the food truck model versus the restaurant model. Find the least expensive way to prove the concept. Do that, prove it, and then move on to the next step. For software, I think there's some pretty cool no-code tools out there that you can use to build early prototypes. Even wireframes sometimes are a great way to prototype software. Bringing some reality into this, we've got a client, Timber Mountain Bike Bell. His problem was he's from Southern California, and the trails there have both hikers and bikers on them. That's pretty common in Utah as well. And no matter how slowly he came up on people and how much noise he tried to make, he'd always spook them. And then the hikers would be angry that this evil biker came up on them a little too quick to their preference and tell him off. And so he's like, well, I got to solve this. So he went and bought a bell for his bike, the ding, ding, ding kind. And what he found is dinging his bell at hikers had kind of the same effect on people that honking your horn at somebody in traffic does. You know, no matter how gently you try to honk that horn to just say, hey, I'm here, you know, people hear that horn as blah, you know, and they're like, what, you know, they get all mad. And he found that on the trail when he's dinging his bell at people, they got upset. They're like, what's this moron yelling at me for? I'm just hiking here. And, you know, being a biker, one of the things they use at mountain bike races is cowbells. People will bring cowbells and ding them for the bikers as a way to cheer them on. And he got inspired by that. He's like, hey, I wonder if we did a passive noise system, if people would react the same way to when I'm actively dinging at them. So he bought a freaking cowbell and duct taped the thing to his mountain bike bars, went to the Sedona Mountain Bike Festival, and he said he found the biggest crowd of hikers he could, and he just rode his bike through them. And he said it was like magic. It was like Moses parting the Red Sea. They just gradually got out of the way. Everybody smiled and waved like no big deal, and he passed right on through. And so that's how simple his prototype was: duct tape and a cowbell to test his hypothesis that passive noise would allow people to know that he was coming and not make them upset that they were being kind of yelled at with an active ding. The next thing he had to do is he realized he didn't want to hear a cowbell the whole time on the trail, so he had to figure out a way to turn it off. And that's ultimately what his product became, was a tiny bell that makes passive noise, and you can flip it on or off on the trail. So anyway, just fun, simple way to prototype. Landing pages is a great way to prototype. I think Kickstarter and Indiegogo have basically made multi-billion-dollar companies out of this. Throw something up, run traffic to it, see if you can get pre-sales or opt-ins. This is a way to really start to figure out, can you reach your market affordably? What's the cost to reach your market? And is your messaging that you've developed along the way connecting with them? Can you get those opt-ins? The ad campaign you run to that is a quick way to help optimize your messaging of what's connecting and what's not. What's cool is Google's AI does a lot of that optimization for you now. And so you can see really quickly, as long as you're hitting the right target market, what messaging's connecting with them. The last thing I'll say is pre-sales here. We're still in the prototype process, guys. Remember, the prototype process. We have not launched the product yet, but this is something I'm passionate about. Do things that don't scale before you try to scale. So go out and sell 10 of your products first to get people to pull out their wallets, hand you money for your product, and say, I want to buy this. I will buy it as soon as it comes out. Pre-sell your product to at least 10 customers before you move on to the next step. If you can't do it here, don't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on tooling and production or software development. Don't do it. Figure it out here. Get your hands dirty as the founder. Don't hire a salesperson. Don't hire an agent. Just go do it. Go talk to people. Sell them. You need at least a few people to say, I love this. This is super important to me. I really need this to work. You need that passionate feedback. Passionate in the form of dollars transacting. They can't just say this looks cool. They have to give you money for it. That's the only way you know you have a real business. Get that feedback while you're still defining it, and you have opportunities to pivot before you go do production. Okay. I'm going to skip this slide for the sake of time because it's kind of redundant. So we'll go on to production next. I'm going to pause after that rant and see if there's any questions before we go on to the last two steps.
Nothing in the chat. So if other people have questions.
Okay. Killer. We'll keep ranting, guys. All right. So step number 6, production. What we're trying to do here is move from building a few prototypes to producing large quantities. What we're looking for at this phase is quality products. One of the biggest struggles with manufacturing is maintaining that high quality product that you signed off on as a prototype at scale. There's always challenges that come up when you move from building a few to moving at scale. So don't think it's over just because you build a nice prototype. Like, stay tuned it during this process. There's a ton to think about here, but what I'm going to focus on, just to give you the most important things, is think about quality control. So in terms of quality control, before you give a factory a PO, get their schedule, get the production schedule from the factory, figure out when the raw materials will be ordered, when it's going to be cut, when the sub-assemblies are going to be produced, any component that's going into that, you need to know what that production schedule is so that you can identify critical QC checkpoints. Because if you got a really critical sub-assembly coming in or a component or material, you want to be able to do QC just on that particular aspect to catch any issues there before it gets built into a complete product. Because if it gets built into the complete product and you got to scrap it, that's a huge setback. So you can find it early on and they just have to rerun some raw material or sub-assemblies. Not a biggie, not a big setback, and much better to catch it earlier on. So identify those critical QC checkpoints during production. Come up with a plan ahead of time with your factory, what you're going to do when you have non-conforming products. Meaning you hopefully have already sent them a QC checklist ahead of time. You've been working on what your requirements are for that product as you've been developing the prototypes. Ask them, hey, when a product doesn't meet this quality standard, what are we going to do? And they're usually pretty good. They usually have plans to rework it or fix it if it's fixable, or scrap it or give you a credit for it. Always better to get this figured out and put in to a contract before you start production than trying to get money back or get squared away after. And then improve. I think we already talked about this earlier, but your most challenging production run is going to be your pilot production run the first time you do a product. It's also a great opportunity to get more of your product out to customers' hands. They're going to give you brilliant feedback, sometimes painful, cold, heartless feedback, because that's what the internet is, but it's all valuable and you can use it to improve if you stay open and just get better every time. In terms of QC, you guys can screenshot this if you want. This is what our QC checklists look like. It's a little snippet of one. Be sure that you're very objective with what the quality control checkpoints are. So what I mean is, like, we didn't say that this needs to be gray and this needs to be blue. We said this needs to be black 7C, two-tone 600D polyester. This needs to be Pantone 298C, right? That's something that if I just said it needs to be blue and gray, if I hire a third-party inspector to come check that, how will they know what color blue I want or what color gray is right? So be objective. Objective means any third party can pick this up and they can test and objectively say yes or no to whether or not that's going to work. The other thing is third-party QC is part art, part science. This is the science part. The art is making sure they actually follow through and comprehend what you're trying to do. But they're also a huge benefit in working with third-party QC. A lot of times they do QC inspections all day long. We found that they can come to us and they'll provide like 80% of what we need in the quality, a QC checklist. We take what they use, like industry standards, it's usually pretty good. And then we build the 20% onto that. That's very unique for our product. That way we're really validating our product more than just like a general product in the market. But have those conversations with the inspectors before they go to your factories. I can't tell you how many times we paid for somebody to go to a factory, we get a report back and it's like half a report. And they're like, oh, well, we didn't know we had to take a Pantone book with us. So we just couldn't do any of that inspection. Very preventable had we communicated ahead of time about what we needed done. Schedule lab testing ahead of time. A lot of times if your product has to meet REACH standards, California Prop 65 standards, UL standards, you're going to have to do some destructive testing or lab testing on it. Schedule that ahead of time. Make sure the factory knows you're scheduling it. Make sure the factory is clear on those standards so that everybody's aligned about what we're trying to accomplish here. Story. We had a really high-end consumer product launch into Target. I think it's actually setting in April. So it'll be live at Target nationwide. And in order to meet that deadline and get it in Target's warehouses on time, we had to ship right before Chinese New Year, which is an absolute nightmare for me because any quality issues we've had tend to get multiplied around Chinese New Year because nobody wants to work. They all want to be home with their families. But I'm huge on quality control. And so I talked to my product manager about that and I just made sure we were doing like triple the amount of quality control we normally do on this. And we got lucky. The factory, to their credit, did an amazing job. But in our sampling, we found like 2% of the bottles had minor aesthetic issues, very minor aesthetic issues. But because we did the QC, we're able to go through and check the full batch, pull any bottle with the aesthetic issue. And what we ship to Target, we know they're going to love. It's good. So we made a good first impression with Target. The customers that buy from Target are going to have a good first impression of our customer's brand because we did that little extra step and just made sure what actually ended up on the shelves was exactly what we wanted to end up on the shelves. Pretty common to find that. So just, do your QC. And then let's wrap up with market entry. What we're trying to do here in steps number 7 is launch and introduce the product to the target market. This is when we do our advertising, our marketing, our sales team goes crazy to get the message out there to our customers that our product exists. In a nutshell, I'm going to go crazy fast through this. Big companies get this wrong all the time. Some famous failures: Google Glass, Amazon Fire Phone, New Coke. One of my favorite failures of all time is GoPro thought they'd compete with Red Bull and make an energy drink, the GoPro energy drink. You got the Microsoft Zune, Google Plus. These big famous failures paint the picture that it's possible for anybody to get to step 7 and still miss on the messaging. What's tricky is us small and medium-sized businesses don't have the same resources, but we also don't have the bureaucracy and the shareholders we got to make happy either. So use your advantage of being small and nimble and closer to your target market to get those early steps right so that you don't have a miss at this last stage. Let me give you an example of a company that did really well. Febreze. They had, when they originally launched, their technology was good. It didn't mask odors. It actually eliminated odors. That drew them to industries that had smell issues. And so one of their case studies that they did is they found a forest ranger that was regularly getting sprayed by skunks in her patrol. She found Febreze and it brought her to tears, the game changer it was for it, because it actually eliminated the odor, changed her personal life, changed her dating life. So Febreze thought, aha, this is it. Like this is our ideal customer. And they built the messaging around her, around, people with real smell issues that they could eliminate, and the product failed miserably. Unfortunately, it missed the mark. That niche was too small. So they went back to the drawing board and they continued to do customer research by actually observing people using their product in real life. And they got lucky because they found this habit. They stumbled across a habit. They noticed when anybody cleaned a room, they'd grab the bottle of Febreze, spray it as the last step of cleaning the room. And they're like, aha, that's it. So they started marketing to that habit of finishing up the tidying up process with a nice shot of air freshener that would make the room smell nice. So they got a slow start, but because they continued to stay humble and have empathy for their clients right to the very end, to the very last step, they eventually got the message right and knocked it out of the park. The rest is history with Febreze. So tips: do step 1 through 5 right. Take your time. Really focus on getting that right. Obsess about your ideal customer. Obsess about them. Be keenly aware of who your early adopters are. Follow the money, but also carefully consider pivots. Meet people where they're at on their customer journey. Figure out where they're at, meet them there. Sell people what they want, but give them what they need. So in this case, they sold people what they wanted, that nice little scent, but they gave them what they needed, technology that actually eliminated scent, didn't just mask odors. Keep monitoring and watching feedback. The last thing I'll say, this is one of the most profound things somebody told me, is build a growth engine for your company. Ryan Dice, again, he taught me his 1-3-10 method. Focus on one growth engine that consistently produces 10K a month for at least 3 consecutive months that you can scale to 10 times that size. And then build the next growth engine. But don't try to build 9 different growth engines at once. It gets complex. You don't know where customers are actually coming from, and it's hard to know your cost of acquisition. So that's it. Some takeaways. Seth Godin, create your constraints ahead of time. Create your constraints ahead of time. Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos, says he realized that whether in poker or in business or in life, it was easy to get caught up and engrossed in what he was currently doing. And that made it easy to forget that he always had the option to change tables. He could always change tables, always change a different product. Number 2, use the design thinking approach, stay humble, iterate, test, learn. And number 3, leverage your unique advantages. Take an honest look at the resources you have and what you bring to the table. Figure out what your competitive advantage is and leverage the heck out of it, because you're going to need it to compete with the big dogs. All right, guys. We hammered through that.
Thank you. Great presentation.
You're welcome. Any questions on any specific aspect of the development process or how it would apply to the idea that you're working on right now? I think we've got just a few minutes to discuss.
I have one quick question.
Uh-huh.
Is there a period of time you would say is too long to spend on the first 5 steps?
No, not necessarily. But
Before you like jump, right? Like, is there?
So this is a really good question. I will say that there's never perfect data. You're never ever going to have every piece of data you want to be totally comfortable making a decision.
Okay.
So at some point, you've got to know when enough is enough and make that step. And that's really personal.
Totally.
To you. So if you feel like you're getting caught in analysis paralysis, but you've got good enough data, you just got to pull the trigger sometimes.
Totally. That's great. Great feedback. Thank you.
Yep. Ram says, how can we access the presentation file? I'll send this to Sarah and she can get it out to you guys.
Yep.
Thanks for sharing the knowledge. I mean, you don't have to do that, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. It's fun. It's my passion. I love freaking products.
Yes. Go passion.
So much fun.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I have a question, Josh.
Yeah, hit me up.
Just like, when you have a great idea that's somewhat, let's say revolutionary or somewhat new, and you're worried about, potential competitors having a similar idea or bringing that similar idea to market before you, how do you balance, being methodical and going through these 7 steps and actually, creating a quality product with also speed and trying to get it to market before someone else does?
I say never let fear be your primary motivator. It'll kill you. It'll trip you up every freaking time. If you look at Apple, they're very strategically not first to market in most cases. They let other breakthrough innovators go out, do their thing, build the demand, find the market, screw it up, and then they come out with the 2nd generation better product and smoke them that way.
Yeah, wait for the face plant.
Yep. So there is a case to be made for being first to market sometimes, but I think if you really look at the case studies in history, it's not as important as you think it is to be first to market. It's better to be right and good and deliver value for your customers.
Because I think it shows, like, that's what I keep hearing it, as you talk about that, is what we do, the time that we take, what you put into those steps will show ultimately. And that's like, how do you want to be seen? It's all about what you put into that process. So makes sense.
100%.
Yeah, Josh, that sounds a lot like the definition of integrity.
I like that. I didn't think about it, but yeah, I like that, Richard. Thank you.
And you don't want to fool people. It won't make you a long-term producer.
Yep.
We have a question in the chat from Laura.
Let's see. Do you know of any trade groups I can source a metal manufacturer? Utah MF does not reply to me. I was actually going to say Utah Manufacturing Association. I'm looking regionally, but can only find overseas. So, Laura, one of the simplest ways, I listed a few, like mfg.com is a great way to source domestic suppliers and makers row. But Google, honestly, if you know what you're trying to do, like, so for metal manufacturing, are you trying to do like, cast aluminum, wire bending? Like, if you know the actual process that you're using, that's very easy to just search on Google. Like, bent metal manufacturing or wire bending in Utah or California, for example.
Hi, thank you. I'm just having a really hard time on that step. My family owns a metal recycling plant, so I'm sourcing metal from that.
Uh-huh.
But this is a separate part of the invention I've created. And I've just gone everywhere. The only casters in Utah seem to be ring casters, and I need something like 1.5 inches. I'm just really stuck on it, and I just don't know what else to do.
So
I've looked at Bing. I've gone everywhere.
very cool. So Roger just dropped a source in the chat. He said check with Fox Fab Laser in Clearfield.
Okay.
So that's one. The other thing I just always question somebody is why Utah? You know, why not California, or why not, you know, Mexico, or why not Asia? You know, sometimes there's a very valid why behind that. Maybe your quantities aren't high enough, or maybe the cost point doesn't, or maybe you don't have resources there. But you know, if you're not getting what you need in Utah, then move to Nevada, Arizona. And then if you're not getting what you need from the West, move out east, and then just kind of expand from there.
I've been everywhere. I've looked everywhere. And even I could totally do the region easy. And I've kind of just thought anywhere I could get to that I could meet with them is kind of my, you know, window I'm trying to access. But I've only shipping overseas is the only thing I can find. And I don't want to do it there.
So there's I don't want to do it there.
Yeah.
But then what do you not want more? Do you not want it?
USA made.
Sure. So I get that. And I'm going to challenge you because I like to be a contrarian. And I'm not necessarily pro Asia, but I am pro do what needs to be done big time. So if there is a strategic tactical reason for manufacturing in the US, be it securing your supply chain, be it IP reasons, or some type of strategic marketing reason for doing it in the US, fine, then you've got to make it here. 99 times out of 100, that's not actually true. When I push people on their assumptions, they just want to make it here. Okay, well, if you want to make it here but can't, then you have no product and it doesn't matter. Then go make it somewhere else. Whoever's picking up the phone is your best supplier, assuming they actually have the capabilities and integrity to meet your target prices to do it right. And then you can get your product to market. And guess what? You don't have to work with them forever. Maybe you're only working with that person for the first few thousand units as you're building demand for your product and growing your volumes. And maybe you work with them for your first 3 years and all of a sudden your volumes go up 10 times. Now, when you call the US manufacturer, you're like, hey, I want to do 100,000 units. Guess what? They're going to call you back. So sometimes it doesn't have to be the end game. It just has to be step one. What does step one look like? And can you do that? So anyway,
Okay.
just my 2 cents.
Okay.
Sorry to be tough. I am, but want to get you what you need.
That's why you're teaching. And then, you know, a couple compliments in the chat.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Hey, Josh, I couldn't agree with you more about what you just said about, you know, going overseas and stuff. I didn't want to do that in the worst way. When we developed our product, and I was scared to death. I never wanted to leave Idaho, you know, let alone going to China. And
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes it's the best move. And like you said, it doesn't always have to be the permanent end source, but we could have never gotten started, you know, here. But anyway, it's tough to make that step. I agree.
It is. And there's things you can do to really protect your IP, make sure you're working with quality suppliers, and, you know, protect your interests. That's a whole other conversation. But you can do a lot to mitigate your risk of going overseas. And it doesn't have to be China. It could be India. It could be Pakistan. It could be Mexico. You know, just find the right fit for you. Who's capable of manufacturing your product to the right quality at the right price. So cool. Any other questions, guys? I think we're over time a little bit, but I'm happy to stay if there's more questions. Happy to chat. All right, Sarah.
All right.
Thank you.
I think we're done.
Thanks, Sarah.
I'd like to say one thing
Yeah.
as the possibly, well, at least one of the elders here. I just want to give a little rule that I learned recently. A successful apple farmer does not plant one magic apple tree.
Mm,
It takes an orchard, get something going. If it changes through the 7 steps, let it change and fly it and use that to jump to the next one that's even better.
I love that. It's a great thought to end on, Richard. Spot
And
on.
you guys are great. I really love participating here.
I appreciate it.
All
All right,
right,
guys.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks again. We'll see ya.
buddy. See ya.